Hello, I'm Nick Park from Evangelical Alliance Ireland. This is our weekly message. It's Friday, but Sunday's coming. Today we want to address a recent incident that you may have been aware of about a church, an evangelical church here in Ireland, that was sued for defamation. Now, the situation is that the church was taken to court because of an incident that happened during a live-streamed baptism service. Now, pretty much what you'd expect in a baptism service, people getting baptized and sharing a bit of testimony before their baptisms. And apparently a young lady shared about some family stuff about her family that had been very difficult for her. And as a result of this, her father sued the church for defamation because the daughter's comments were then included in a live stream on the internet, that was carried on social media. Now, I have to say the church involved here did absolutely nothing wrong. I think they've handled this case very well indeed. But it's been a very difficult situation for them that they were subjected to this. I think quite unfair that a church that's simply winning people to the Lord and then baptizing them in obedience to the commands of Jesus is therefore subjected to a court case like this. The problem is that when something is streamed online, it's taking us into another area of legislation beyond simply free speech and what happens in religious services, because it's coming more and more under the area of being more like broadcasting that's taken place, because it's electronic communications being carried online. Now, I would have to say that the finding of the court, that they did find the church liable, not 100% liable. There's some responsibility had to be carried for the social media company and even the family member herself. But I guess, you know what, trying to sue a social media company, you need deep pockets to do that. And so the church was probably perceived to be an easier target to go after. And it's something that we do need to think about carefully within evangelical churches, because other people may well try this on. Now, the church was ordered to pay approximately €14,000. Thank goodness that was covered by their insurance policy. It's always good to have the right insurance. So that was covered. But nevertheless, it has been a difficult situation for the church. The pastor's names have been bandied around in the press and everything else. And it's not the kind of thing that we want to see happening in churches. And as I say, the church has done absolutely nothing wrong in this case. But we need to be aware that other people may well try this on. And to be honest, evangelical churches, we are an easier target for these kinds of lawsuits, because other churches are often very scripted in what they say. Whereas when in our kinds of churches, we have people sharing testimony and everything else. You never know quite what somebody's going to come out with. Now, there are financial implications, obviously, to this. So, again, as we say, the insurance was in place, and thank God for that. But it is an unpleasant situation to have to deal with. So, what can we learn from this? Well, we need to realize that streaming on the internet is taking you into a whole different area. Whereas we have free speech for what we can say and expressing our religious views, and that is guaranteed to us. It's not just guaranteed to us under the Irish Constitution, it's guaranteed to us under international human rights law. But when you are putting something out there on the internet, then again, legislation and liability and everything else can become a lot more restrictive. I discovered this back in 2015 when I was involved in a case that was known as the Satanic Islam trial, which was where a pastor in Belfast, Pastor Pastor James McConnell made comments about Islam during a sermon that was broadcast on the internet. And as a result of that, he was taken to court under the Communications Act. So it was treated differently because it was online. I volunteered to be an expert witness for the defense in that case. I spent a week in court with Pastor McConnell, sat beside him. I provided moral support and through the trial and everything else. And thankfully, he was found not guilty of the charges that had been brought against him. But as churches, how can we try and guard against this kind of situation happening more often? Because while financially this was covered by the insurance company, and apparently the insurance company really have been wonderful to deal with, the church made that clear to me. Nevertheless, if there were to be a lot of cases like this, we can't guarantee that insurance companies would continue to include this, or church insurance might end up becoming a lot more expensive as far as the premiums are concerned. So churches, I would say, do check your insurance, see if that you are covered against these kinds of incidents happening. But maybe the most important lesson that we could take from this as churches is it may be better, instead of just streaming everything live, to actually record it and then put it up even after the service. And that way, if there's anything there that you are in doubt about, and you think, you know what, that could come back and bite us, what that person said or that testimony or whatever else, it gives you a chance just to edit it out of the stream so that you don't have it going live. Very often, this is what broadcasters do. So yeah, I remember being interviewed on the Pat Kenny show back in 2015. And I do remember then that I thought it was going to be live, and I went in. I'm sat in the studio with Pat Kenny, and I very quickly realised this is not the time his show was on. It was recorded earlier on, and then they edited it. And there was something that I said about an American politician, and I could see Pat smiling as soon as I said it, and I realised he was going to make sure that was cut out, because they didn't want News Talk Radio didn't want to be defending themselves against some kind of legal action over something I had said, even though what I said was perfectly correct. But basically, it may well be worth considering, instead of just streaming everything live, to actually record it and then just have a listen back over it and say, is there something there that maybe somebody could try to use against us? So we may need to just change the way we do things a little bit here to avoid being exposed, because what we don't want is this becoming a regular occurrence where people see the church said this, the church said that. It's an easy way of maybe trying to get money out of the church. So I'd encourage us to think about this, pray about this, check your insurance, and seriously consider whether recording something and then giving it a once over before you put it out there on the internet may well be a more effective way of getting the message out there. We're all using media a lot more, we're all using the internet a lot more, but sometimes it still is a bit like the Wild West out there, and there are things that we need to guard against. The fact is, yeah, it's something else that we got to think about. And I know a lot of pastors out there, your plate is already full, but you don't really want this kind of thing coming up against you in the church. As I say, the church dealt with it really well. They did absolutely nothing wrong. I think they were treated unfairly, but fair play to them for how they have dealt with it. Look, it's another thing that we've got to consider. It's another thing we've got to be aware of. But do remember, the Holy Spirit will give us the wisdom to deal with this well, because it might be Friday, but Sunday's coming and God is in control. God bless you. Join us again next week for another message from Evangelical Alliance Ireland.